Gonzalo, let's get the obvious out of the way. You get to face the Seattle Sounders for the first time since you've left. What are your thoughts? What you're feeling going into this game?
Well, first of all, obviously the obvious first, good to see some good friends, a lot of friends in Seattle, whether our players or staff or coaching staff. I think a lot of good people in Seattle that I miss. So very happy about it. But obviously, it's also the moment that we as a team in Atlanta United were facing. It's just a good match for us. It's a key match for us. It's a must win. So yes, all the good feelings about Seattle and all that before, but the preparation is ultimately the most important part for my team.
Obviously, the results haven't been there as much as you want. What's been the most difficult thing, all injuries aside, to just kind of get used to being a head coach for a team like Atlanta United?
Well, I wouldn't say it's difficult. I think it's just the job that we have as coaches is, dealing with moments of adversity, whether it were injuries or some not great performances or good performances, but not getting the final result. I don't think there's anything difficult on that. It's just part of the job to deal with injuries, to deal with bad moments in the season. But that's a challenge. I see it as an opportunity to improve my leadership skills and try to motivate a team that hasn't have had good results in the season, how I can turn that into a motivation and try to have that edge in the last part of the season. That's probably the challenge for me as a coach, but not really difficult, Nico.
When you look at the standings and the games left over, is this a must-win game? I know you probably don't like that must-win game if I know you the way I do, but is it a must-win?
Yes, of course. I said that before. It's a must-win. For us, we are at home. We've been kind of solid in our stadium, not many losses. So I feel like we have to come back to be positive in our stadium. There's going to be a lot of fans, a big crowd in the game. So I think that motivates our squad. And because of the moment in the standings, the moment of the season, I think it's a must win for sure.
Dude, I see you got your hand raised. Go for it.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time, Coach. I wanted to ask, just with this transition, do you or have you at all within the past year found yourself reflecting back to anything that Brian, like any kind of nugget as far as a head coaching that Brian has done or that you've maybe mimicked or reflected or used in this new spot?
Yeah, Jada, I think many things. I think actually not just now because I'm a head coach, but even when I was his assistant, I was learning a lot from Brian. I mean, I said that today in my press conference that I'm facing the best coach in MLS. No question about it. I haven't seen any other coach to achieve what Brian has achieved. And me working closely to him for 4.5 years, I know why he achieved that many things. So there are many, many things in terms of management, coaching, knowledge of the game that I took from Brian already. So obviously now he's trying to apply that in these tough moments that we are facing in Atlanta because of the results. So I'm trying to put everything together. My ideas, what I learned from Brian, what I learned from Tommy Dutra, what I learned from Jimmy Traore, what I learned from Preki. I think it was a lot of good guys in the coaching staff that I take a lot of knowledge in my time in Seattle.
If I could add one more, do you, how have you handled, being at that top position, coaching wise and dealing with critique? I know you guys have been through a lot of injuries, which can kind of explain some of the losses, but there's also a lot of critique that falls on yourself. So how have you kind of handled that aspect of where you guys are right now?
Well, I don't read a lot of media, so that saves me from dealing with that. And what I read, I take what is is valuable. I think the most critiqued person is me and my coaching staff. We're very critical on the way we have meetings every day and how we analyze and digest our daily training sessions, our management of the players, our rehab. We are very critical of ourselves. So for me, criticism from the outside, yes, I take what I think is valuable, but the biggest critiques come from within the organization. We have an open table here where everyone in their department, they are able to express themselves and have criticism to everything we do on a daily basis. So for me, criticism is good because it helps us to improve, and we have these here within the organization. So no problem with that, Jada.
Hey, Coach, you mentioned a second ago, you called Brian the best coach in MLS. How would you describe his coaching style?
Well, I think number one, his experience. That's something that he had with a lot of time in the USL. He was a player. He also learned a lot from C.J. Smith, from other mentors that he have had in the past. So I think he's a very experienced coach that understands that there's a person behind the player. I think he understands there's a human being. He understands problems in the family. He knows how to manage and how to pull certain strings within the team. He analyzed very deeply what type of players he has, and then he pulls the right strings on each player to get the best out of each player. So I think that sounds very easy. That's something that Brian talks a lot about, trying to prepare the players at their best and try to get the best out of the players, but it's not that easy. It requires a lot of thought, a lot of thinking on how to manage certain players and get the best out of them. And that's how he does. And then I think he's very humble, and he's not worried about other coaches in his coaching staff to do better in certain areas, because that helps him to shine. And I think that talks very high on Brian, that he has already a very good coaching staff with Andy and Freddie and Preki and Tommy Dutra, and he likes that help from very well prepared coaches around him. In the past, he had Jimmy, he had me, so and he was okay with that. So it requires a lot of humility from his side and a lot of security in what he does. It's a great coach, and I think that's why, because he understands the person and he understands how to motivate every time the locker room.
And continuing off of what you were just saying there, I asked the same question to him about an hour ago, and he was talking about how good of a tactician you are. Looking back, based on what you just said, how well do you guys feel that you complemented each other for the years that you were in Seattle? Was there anything, that you felt specifically stood out about how you two, specifically just the two of you, worked together when you were talking soccer?
Well, first of all, I don't think it was only him and I. It was Jimmy Traore and Preki and Tommy Dutra. I think the culture that he created in that coaching staff that we were part of, it was that everybody can participate. Everyone is able to, give his opinion. And I think Jimmy Traore has a big resume. Preki has a big resume, and we were all trying to help Brian. That was the main thing. But I think also that Brian is a great tactician. I don't know if maybe he's a little bit more simple than me, but he understands how to attack. He understands how to defend. He knows how to prepare his team tactically very well. It's just maybe I am a little bit more picky in certain movements and certain things, but I don't think that Brian is far away from that. I think he's a great tactician as well.
Guys, other questions? And if there are some in Spanish, that's totally fine. I know Nico had one in Spanish, and I'm guessing a few others might as well. But if there's any English, go for it. If not, we can go into Spanish. Nico, go ahead.
Gonzalo, siempre un placer hablar contigo. Me gustaría tocar un poco al respecto de lo que ha sido tu tiempo en Atlanta. Se han escuchado a veces la dificultad o se rumorea de ciertos problemas con jugadores de alto calibre como Joseph, como Almeida. ¿Qué me podrías decir al respecto de eso y qué difícil ha sido esa parte de manejar al jugador como nuevo técnico en esta liga?
Bueno, no sé qué leas tú, Nico, ni qué hayas escuchado. A lo mejor sería bueno que me mandaras un tweet con eso, porque que yo sepa, no tengo ningún problema con ningún jugador. a menos de que ellos lo tengan conmigo, que no lo creo, porque tengo una gran relación con todos. Mencionaste a dos, a Joseph y a Thiago, me llevo muy bien con ellos, diario platico con ellos, me meto al rondo todos los días con ellos y no hay ningún problema con nadie. No sé de dónde saques eso o a qué viene ese comentario.
Se diría un poco más al respecto de Joseph saliendo desde la banca y Almeida a lo mejor no siendo elegido para ciertos partidos. Ha sido algo más como una narrativa, más que toda de la gente que sigue al club. Entonces, más o menos a eso iba el punto.
Sí, bueno, hubo unos partidos donde yo sentí que la mejor opción era Ronaldo arriba, pero fue platicado con Joseph, lo he hablado con Joseph, soy muy claro con Joseph y Joseph es muy claro conmigo y tenemos una relación de honestidad y creo que nos llevamos bien. No creo que haya ningún problema. Que decida que a veces uno juega o otro no juega es normal en cualquier equipo, pero problemas no hay. Después lo de Thiago, nada que ver. Estuvo enfermo después de un partido, vomitó 2 días seguidos y no pudo entrenar y no lo puse por eso. Y después quise repetir alineación porque sentí que el equipo había jugado bien con el equipo inicial y eso fue todo. No hubo ningún problema con Thiago de ninguna manera. Pero si tú sabes algo de eso, pues mándame por ahí alguna información que yo no sepa.
No, gracias por la aclaración. Era más que todo ir directamente a la fuente para aclarar cualquier cosa. Y siendo alguien tan tácticamente privilegiado como tú lo eres, ¿qué tan difícil ha sido a veces plantear un juego y que las cosas no se ejecuten a lo mejor de las formas que tú piensas y adaptarse al juego? ¿Ha sido eso difícil de adaptarse a ese movimiento de ser un técnico en MLS?
Yo creo que ha sido difícil, Nico, por la inestabilidad que hemos tenido de no poder repetir muchas alineaciones. De hecho, no recuerdo si lo hemos hecho solamente un par de ocasiones que hemos repetido alineación. Las lesiones no tanto, obviamente nos merman por la falta de calidad y eso es obvio, ¿no? Que al salir Brad, al salir los 3 porteros que teníamos inicialmente, ninguno está en este momento, por ejemplo, ¿no? Entonces, obviamente, pues son tipos de cualidades de un portero que ya no las tenemos y ahora tenemos que suplirla con otras cualidades de otros porteros. Y lo mismo pasa con Miles Robinson, con Ossie Alonso, con Andrew Goodman, con Brooks Lennon, con Ronald Hernández, en su momento con Joseph, que tuvo una cirugía, con Luis Araujo, que tuvo un desgarre, Santi Sosa, con altas y bajas, Ibarra con el primer desgarro. Entonces, hemos tenido varios jugadores que ha sido difícil mantener un 11 y esa inestabilidad, que de hecho, bueno, algo me hablaban de que he aprendido de Brian, es que eso, la estabilidad, mantener un grupo fuerte que juegue continuamente junto, que no haya muchos cambios, es algo que le aprendí a Brian y que me gustaría aplicar, pero no hemos podido tener eso. Entonces, creo que en ese conocimiento de cada jugador, de los pequeños detalles, pequeños movimientos, las pequeñas sociedades, no se nos ha podido dar, pero aún así, te soy sincero, Nico, estoy contento con lo general, la idea de juego que tiene el equipo. Si tú revisas las estadísticas, estamos en segundo lugar en posesión de balón, en top 5 en chances creadas, en tiros generados, en expected goals, que es una estadística que hoy gusta mucho. Estamos en el top 5 y pasa que quizás no hemos tenido la fortuna de acertar tantos goles y atrás nos han metido más de los que deberían de habernos metido. Entonces ha sido difícil en ese sentido en cuestión de resultados, pero en cuestión de rendimiento no creo que estemos tan alejados de dónde queremos estar con el equipo que tenemos en este momento.
Muchas gracias.
And Jada, did you have another one? I saw you had your hand raised.
I'll be okay right now. Thanks.
Okay. Guys, any final questions for Atlanta United head coach Gonzalo Pineda?
Gonzalo, la última en español. Conociendo a Seattle como lo conoces, sin dar muchas tácticas, porque Brian tampoco es que haya dado mucho, ya que sabe que se escucharás esto. ¿Cuál es la clave para tener un buen resultado ante este equipo de Seattle Sounders?
Yo creo que la clave es estar totalmente concentrado los 90 minutos, Nico. Yo creo que si algo tiene Seattle es que por eso ha sido tan dominante en los últimos años, es que sabe jugar de muchos estilos. Si Seattle te puede dominar territorialmente con buena posesión, lo hace. Si no, sabe ponerse en un bloque medio bastante fuerte, hacer el famoso pentágono en el centro y bloquear los pases internos y después las transiciones con Jordan. Si quieren jugar a balones a la espalda con Jordan Morris, lo saben hacer. Si quieren jugar más juego asociativo, Nico, Rusnak, en su momento con Joao Paulo, Cristian, se saben combinar bastante bien. Entonces, es un equipo que sabe jugar en diferentes estilos y se sienten cómodos en cualquier momento del partido. Entonces, para mí, la clave será en estar concentrado los 90 minutos, en que no porque estés dominando a Seattle en ciertos momentos, ellos se van a desesperar. Ellos están bien con eso. Si de repente ellos te dominan, nosotros estar estables emocionalmente y los 90 minutos estar metidos en el partido. Creo que la concentración y la intensidad durante todo el partido es clave y no tener altas y bajas durante el partido. Ahí es en donde Seattle mentalmente saca mucha diferencia en la liga, me parece.